The People's Liberation Army is set to take control of all Chinese borders, including the 4,057-kilometer long, all-important India-China border and the line of actual control. This is being seen as a bid by the Chinese President Xi Jinping to have total control over the country's defense and foreign policy. But is this merely an internal reorganization of forces within China? If not, what does this mean for India? Anant Krishnan in Beijing with this report.
A standoff around the strategic Chicken's Neck, India's vital corridor to the northeastern states. It took months of diplomacy to ease tensions between Asia's two giants over a small territory in Doklam. But China's new plans seem to be far more alarming. Late Wednesday, Beijing announced measures to give the People's Liberation Army sweeping control over its land borders with India. China has decided to demobilize its border police. Its Frontier Defense Police Force and allied units are being transferred to local administrations, and the People's Liberation Army is set to take full charge of the borders, including along India.
At the National People's Congress here in Beijing, Xi Jinping not only tightened his control over the party, but also the grip of the party over the military and government in China. This includes the Border Defense Forces of China, which now will all come under the direct control of the PLA, as well as the Central Military Commission, which of course is headed by Xi Jinping himself.
Many of these stunning reforms aim at strengthening Communist Party institutions and their direct control. Under President Xi Jinping, the CPC has sought greater power, from foreign policy to national security, and that's what is precisely going to happen.
Following these latest reforms in Beijing, all aspects of China's army will now be under the firm control of Xi Jinping. For India and the region, this will mean getting used to dealing with a more assertive China and a stronger People's Liberation Army. Reporting for India Today here in Beijing, this is Anant Krishnan.
Joining me now on the broadcast is Lieutenant General B.S. Jaswal, former Army Commander, Northern Command. Also with me is India Today's Defense Editor, Sudhiranjan Sen. My first question is to India Today's Anant Krishnan, who's joining us live from Beijing. Anant, bring us details of the internal reorganization that's being done, and what does this mean on ground at the borders?
Well, that's right. The reforms that have been announced here in Beijing have really been wide-ranging and sweeping. And one of the interesting reforms that was announced was in terms of boosting the control of Xi Jinping and the party, including on the military. As we just reported, they've disbanded, or they're going to demobilize some of the frontier police units. So the entire border will now come directly under the control of the PLA. And what that means, of course, is that it will directly be under the command of Xi Jinping and the Central Military Commission. And it also suggests, Gaurav, in the past that they had some problems in the chain of command, as that's what the official announcement here in Beijing explained, saying that one of the ideas was to have a more strict command under the party central.
Hey, stay with me, Shudi. How is the defense establishment in India looking at this reorganization?
Well, Gaurav, to begin with, I mean, just as the news were breaking, I was able to speak to some very senior officials within the security establishment, and they're not at all worried. Because number one, the first thing that they point out is that this is not India specific, this is all across the border. So therefore, to feel that this entire move is directed towards India is perhaps not correct. Second, what Government of India is saying, that just like the ITBP, the Indo-Tibetan Border Force, or the police force, which is under the MHA, if that were to be brought under the military, and put under one command, the same thing would have happened. And this is exactly what we are seeing. The police out there, the border police of China has been brought under the PLA, and that is, that is nothing more than that. And also, The Chinese military has undergone a reorganization. They've gone in for a theater command. This year is the year of training. They're going to find out how the theater commands work out.
Okay.
And whether the machine works, because it's a completely different animal.
So what you're saying is that these are reforms in military affairs in China. General Jaswal, in the past, as Anant was also pointing out, China has hinted at a communication gap between its army and the border guarding force that led to either tensions or incursions or escalations between Indian forces and the Chinese at the LAC. How do you look at this development, sir?
I think Ranjan has summed up beautifully well. It is centralization of command and control, because even if when Xi was here in India, the Depsang Plateau incident was on. That was by the Border Defense Regiment. So to centralize the entire thing under one command, the CMC, I think that has been the philosophy. But notwithstanding, there are certain other issues. To be frank, I totally agree. We should not be overtly worried about it, because it is not in the interest of China to go in even for a limited war against India. But it has a philosophy, and it had laid down timelines. First philosophy was creeping assertiveness, which you saw like in Sundrangchu, the Wangdong incident which took place.
Yes.
Then other areas like in Ladakh, the entire transgressions have increased, and longer durations of transgression. Now the Doklam, and like once Mr. Guruswamy had said, possession is ownership. So they would like to go into certain enclaves if required. They will possess that.
So let's take this step by step. General, let's take this step by step. Let me also bring Shruti Ranjan Sen once again into this conversation. Shruti, there have been repeated media reports about China strengthening its defenses at Doklam. The general was also talking about, they may want to occupy what was disputed territory with Bhutan. So the current strengthening of defenses at the Doklam Plateau, is it in Chinese territory or is it in territory disputed with Bhutan, according to your sources in the ministry?
Gaurav, to begin with, North Doklam has now been occupied by China, and we were one of the first to report that. Doklam, yes, is under discussion, disputed with Bhutan. But that said, India does not feel threatened by the new developments, that is construction of prefab huts or positioning of troops, because our area of sensitivity is the Torsa Nala and the Jampheri Ridge, and they are far away from it. And the build-up that you are seeing is largely in Yatung, that is deep inside Chumbi Valley. It is a decided Chinese territory, and there is nothing that we can do. Just they have amassed troops. We have enough number of troops amassed on this side of the border.
Okay.
So just as they cannot say where we keep our troops, neither can we say where China can keep their troops.
Okay. Anant, the troop reorganization within China, so that border guarding forces will be deployed elsewhere or internally. Chinese army will be right at the LAC all along and the border. What does this mean for India, according to the Chinese experts you've been speaking to?
Well, in terms of what this means for India, I think on the one hand, what we can expect to see is more direct control of from the PLA when it comes to the border. And I think one of the questions that has been puzzling experts in India for a long time is, have some of the border incidents been rogue incidents created by rogue local commanders? I think now it's safe to assume that next time there's a standoff, there won't be an issue in the chain of command, and we can assume that the government in Beijing and the Central Military Commission is certainly backing whatever is happening on the border. So I think that's one significant takeaway. And the second issue, of course, is what Xi Jinping stressed at the end of this National People's Congress was that in terms of China not willing to lose 1 inch of territory. So this means not only in terms of the boundary with India, but whether it's South China Sea or East China Sea, we can certainly expect to see a lot more muscle flexing as far as China is concerned.
And General, in your appreciation, will China's focus be the South China Sea or this 4,057-kilometer long border in LAC with India? And now, as Anant was pointing out, China won't have the excuse of any rogue commander on ground with the PLA directly in charge.
Yeah, the last statement first. Absolutely, I am in agreement on that. Now, as far as its focus is concerned on the South China Sea, as also along our 4,000 square kilometers, 4,000 kilometers, running kilometers against China. Well, Chinese are known to be addressing they call it multi-acupuncture points, which are possible. So they have now posted themselves and they are ready for any eventuality which may be required. I would relate it once again to my statement of creeping assertiveness. If they wish to, they can come and occupy one of the areas since the troops are regular troops deployed over there, the dimension will be slightly different. South China Sea, etc., they will go multi-directional as far as any diplomacy against India is concerned. But there is one point. More China starts bothering India in its endeavor for coercive strategy or creeping assertiveness, it will bring in more convergence between America, Australia, Japan and India.
Okay.
So that is a bit of a caution for China.
Quadrilateral meetings?
A kind of a redeployment which has taken place for better command and control.
Okay. Now, General Jaiswal, this of course is a hypothetical scenario. In case China, through its posturing, threatens our defenses or security at the Chicken's Neck area and the Siliguri corridor, should India be doing the same elsewhere? Do you see that kind of change in our mindset, in our attitude, the way we went into Doklam to protect Bhutan's national interests and of course our own interests? Is China, their corridor threatened or their highway threatened in Aksai Chin?
Gaurav, fortunately, as a youngster, I walked this Dokala to Batangla. My first posting was in that area. I've seen this area. I was instructor in Bhutan from Gemushin side. I've seen the Jampheri Ridge as also the Doklam Plateau, as they call it. We call it Dolum Plateau. The terrain which is there from Gemushin southwards, if you have to see, it is all cliffs for any major force to go down. There is a road in the Jardaka, headworks which are there that goes down to the plains and then traverse 70 kilometers towards the Siliguri corridor, the Chicken's Neck as they call it.
Okay.
I find it slightly theoretical because China will not be able to sustain its forces in that area. But it turns the flank of the defenses in Sikkim. That is more important. And by occupying Doklam, it has protected its eastern flank of the Chumbi Valley. If it does anything over here, from Kerang Plateau side, from the eastern side, that is the western side,
okay,
we have an access, we overlook Yatung. We can choke him there. So
okay,
it's a tit-for-tat game.
So it's a tit-for-tat game,
Shudi. Our flank gets exposed. But to go to Chicken's Neck, I have my reserves.
Okay. Shudi, are we equally aggressive along the LAC now? Are we better prepared when it comes to infrastructure or when it comes to weapons and equipment?
Well, weapons and equipment, there may be questions and it's better to leave it to the experts. But are we aggressive? Yes, we are much more aggressive. And that is why you see the number of transgressions or face-offs shooting up. The number of transgressions and face-offs will only shoot up when you send in more patrols, when there's more boots on the ground. And as we have seen, it has simply gone up. Infrastructure, yes, there's a huge improvement in the infrastructure in the last 10 to 15 years. Gaurav.
Okay. Gentlemen, stay with me for a moment. There's important bits of information that's coming in. The latest is that there's been an India-China meet over border affairs in Delhi just today. Both sides, both India and China, exchanged views on improving border management. Both countries underline that maintenance of peace and tranquility at the borders is very important. It's an important prerequisite for developing bilateral relations between the two countries. Various confidence-building measures aimed at enhancing mutual trust were discussed. What we're also being told, both sides agreed to explore possibility of strengthening cooperation through exchange of visits and institutionalized dialogue mechanism to promote cooperation between the two defense forces. General Jaswal, as someone who was once denied a visa to China, how would you look at these developments between India and China earlier today?
You see, this is, I think, the 19th Special Representatives meeting which has taken place. Remember one thing, Chinese believe stability at the strategic level and aggressive attitude at the tactical level. These are steps absolutely fine, but at the ground level, they maintain an aggressive posture.
Okay.
I've commanded 4 corps, so I know that area very well. What happens at Yangtze, there comes to virtual physical, handling of manhandling of troops, Indian troops. You have seen in Depsang, you have seen in the Galwan Valley where they have come in the Depsang Plateau or other areas. You've seen in the finger areas in your Pengong So.
Now it remains to be seen with the Chinese army that's directly taking control of borders. Will that become a thing of the past? General, I have run out of time on this debate. Many thanks for joining me. There has been a BrahMos missile test today. So the formidable supersonic cruise missile BrahMos with an indigenous seeker has been successfully test fired today. The BrahMos supersonic cruise missile has been successfully test fired at 8:42 this morning at the Pokhran test range in Rajasthan. Now this supersonic cruise missile was jointly developed by DRDO and BrahMos Aerospace. So this is an India-Russia joint cooperation. The precision strike weapon flew in its designated trajectory and hit the preset target with pinpoint accuracy. My colleague Shruti Ranjan Sen with me on this story. Shruti, what does this mean? The test firing of a BrahMos with an indigenous seeker and hitting the target, pinpoint accuracy.
Well, Gaurav, it's a huge step forward. It's a huge development. BrahMos already inducted. But what is a seeker? In layman's term, the seeker is the eyes of the missile. It guides the missile to its target. Now, if you can develop such a sophisticated eye, so to say, or a seeker, that means you have cracked the code. And this is not only going to help in BrahMos, perhaps in the other missiles that we also have. So it's a huge development and a huge step up for India, and all kudos to our scientists in DRDO.
Now, when it comes to the BrahMos supersonic cruise missile, are we in a position now? So the first missile was said to be 300 kilometers. We also have a longer version of the BrahMos that's coming up. Are we in a position today to fire the BrahMos from land, sea and air?
We are definitely in a position to fire BrahMos from the land. From air, we have already tested it under a Su-30, Russian-made Su-30. We have married it and matched it. From the sea, yes, they're already being fitted in the upcoming destroyers that you're going to see, the Kolkata class and the others are follow-on classes. So they will be all through in these 3 spectrums. You're going to see the BrahMos in use.
Okay, we will leave it at that for the moment. As far as the latest in Jammu and Kashmir is concerned, I must tell our viewers there was an encounter that was on in Kupwara in North Kashmir for the past 2 days. That encounter is now over. 5 Pakistani terrorists of Lashkar-e-Taiba were killed in this fierce encounter that lasted 1 night and 2 days. Mopping up operations were on even today. Finally, that operation has been declared successful, but this success came at a very high price. 5 braves of the Indian Army and the Jammu and Kashmir Police made the supreme sacrifice of their lives. These braves, they fought terrorists in the higher reaches of Kupwara in a very dense forest. 3 army personnel and 3 Jammu and Kashmir Police personnel made the supreme sacrifice of their lives, killing 5 terrorists. An extremely high attrition rate. We pay our respects to our braves and we thank them forever keeping India first.
for watching the video. For more such news and updates, please like, share and subscribe to India Today. Also check out our other great videos from our channel. We know you will love to.